I was folding laundry in my living room when my phone buzzed with a text from my sister Julia. The message was brief, almost clinical in its detachment. Hey, we decided to keep Mom's birthday trip small this year. Just immediate family. Hope you understand. I read it 3 times, trying to make sense of the words. Immediate family. I was her daughter. How much more immediate could I get? My apartment in Minneapolis felt suddenly smaller, the walls pressing in as I sat on the edge of my couch. Outside, October rain tapped against the windows, matching the rhythm of my confused heartbeat. I had taken time off from my job at the marketing firm specifically for this trip. My mother was turning 65, and we had been planning a weekend at a cabin by Lake Superior for months. I called Julia immediately. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice carrying that particular tone of forced cheerfulness that people use when they know they are doing something wrong, but refuse to acknowledge it. Amy, hi. Did you get my text? I did. I'm confused. What do you mean by immediate family? I'm literally Mom's daughter. There was a pause, filled with the sound of children shouting in the background. Julia had 3 kids under the age of 8, and their chaos was a constant soundtrack to every conversation we had. Well, you know, Patrick and his family will be there, and me and David with the kids. It's just going to be crowded already, and we thought it would be better to keep the numbers down. Patrick, my younger brother, the golden child who could do no wrong in anyone's eyes, despite the fact that he had bounced from job to job for the past 5 years, while his wife Melissa supported him with her pharmaceutical sales income. He was 32, but still acted like a college student who expected the world to accommodate his whims. So Patrick gets to come, but I don't. I tried to keep my voice steady, but anger was creeping into my words. It's not like that. He has the kids, Amy. Mom wants to see her grandchildren. Patrick has 2 kids. You have 3. That's 5 grandchildren. I'm just one person. How does that math make the cabin more crowded? Julia sighed, and I could picture her rubbing her forehead in that exaggerated way she did when she wanted people to know they were inconveniencing her. Look, this isn't about math. Mom just thought it would be nice to have a quiet weekend with the family. You can see her when we get back. The dismissal stung more than the exclusion. I had been demoted to an afterthought, someone who could be shuffled aside without consequence. Did Mom actually say she didn't want me there? Or did you and Patrick decide this on your own? We discussed it as a family. Mom agreed it made sense. As a family that apparently no longer included me in its decision-making processes. I thought about my mother, about whether she had really agreed to this, or if my siblings had simply steamrolled over her objections the way they steamrolled over everything else. My mother had always been soft-spoken, more likely to go along with the loudest voices than to assert her own preferences. Fine, I said finally, because there was nothing else to say. Fighting would only make me look desperate. And I had learned over the years that desperation was blood in the water to people like Julia and Patrick. I hope you all have a nice time. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking as I set the phone down on the coffee table. The pile of laundry sat forgotten on the couch beside me, and I stared at it without really seeing it. 29 years old, and I was still surprised when my family treated me as expendable. The pattern had been there my whole life, of course. I just had never wanted to see it clearly. Patrick had been the miracle baby, arriving after my parents had been told they couldn't have more children. Julia, 6 years older than me, had naturally taken on the role of the responsible eldest. I had been the middle child, neither special nor particularly needed, the one who got good grades because no one noticed when I didn't, who stayed out of trouble because there was no benefit to causing it. I had paid for my own college education through scholarships and part-time jobs, while my parents had funded Patrick's adventure through 3 different universities before he finally settled on a business degree he never used. I had bought my own car at 22, while Patrick had been gifted a new sedan for his 25th birthday. The inequity had always been there, dressed up in excuses about Patrick needing more support, about him having a family to think about now. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Julia. Actually, I need to ask you a favor. David and I were hoping to join the trip after all. Could you watch the kids that weekend? It would really help us out. We never get time alone together. I stared at the message in disbelief. They had uninvited me from my own mother's birthday celebration, and now wanted me to provide free childcare so they could attend. The audacity was breathtaking. Before I could formulate a response, another text arrived. Patrick and Melissa need someone to watch their kids, too. Mom suggested you might be available since you're not coming on the trip. It would mean so much to her if you could help out. I did not respond to either text. Instead, I sat in my apartment as the afternoon light faded into evening, trying to process what had just happened. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Not just at the exclusion from the trip, but at the years of accumulated dismissals, the casual cruelties disguised as family dynamics. My job at the marketing firm was demanding but fulfilling. I had worked my way up from an assistant position to a project manager role, earning respect from colleagues and clients alike. In that world, my contributions mattered. People listened when I spoke. My ideas had value. But the moment I stepped back into family interactions, I became invisible again, my needs and feelings perpetually secondary to everyone else's convenience. I ordered Thai food for dinner and tried to focus on a movie, but my mind kept drifting back to the texts. 5 children. They wanted me to watch 5 children for an entire weekend while they celebrated my mother without me. The presumption was staggering. Around 9 that evening, my mother called. I almost did not answer, but curiosity won out. Amy, sweetheart, Julia told me about the trip. Did she? I kept my voice neutral. I want you to know that I didn't mean to exclude you. It's just that the cabin is small, and with all the grandchildren, space is tight. You understand, don't you? There it was again. That plea for understanding. For me to be the reasonable one who accepted whatever scraps I was offered. Mom, do you actually want me there? The pause was too long. Of course I want you there, honey. It's just complicated. It's not complicated. Either you want me at your birthday celebration or you don't. Please don't make this difficult. Patrick has been so stressed lately, and Julia works so hard with the children. I just want everyone to be happy. Everyone except me, apparently. Julia asked me to babysit the kids during the trip. All 5 of them. Oh, did she? Well, that would be wonderful if you could help out. You're so good with children, and it would give the parents a real break. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar weight of expectation settling onto my shoulders. I had time off approved for that weekend because I was supposed to go on the trip. I made plans. What plans? You live alone. It's not like you have a family depending on you. The words hit like a slap. You live alone. As if my life without a spouse and children was somehow less legitimate, less worthy of consideration. Never mind that I had built a career, maintained friendships, created a life I was proud of. None of that mattered because I had not reproduced. I have to go, Mom. I'll think about the babysitting. Amy, please, don't be selfish about this. Family helps family. I hung up before I said something I would regret. My hands were shaking again, but this time it was pure rage. Selfish. I was selfish for not wanting to provide free labor after being excluded from a family event. The logic was so twisted it would be funny if it were not so painful. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every family gathering where I had been overlooked, every conversation where my achievements had been glossed over in favor of Patrick's mediocre accomplishments. I thought about every time I had bitten my tongue, every time I had accepted less because making waves would only confirm that I was difficult, problematic, not a team player. The next morning, I went to work determined to focus on something productive. My team was developing a campaign for a local architecture firm, and I threw myself into the creative process. My colleague Brandon noticed my intensity during our meeting. Everything okay? You seem like you're channeling some serious energy today." I managed a smile. "Family stuff. Nothing I want to talk about." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Brandon was gay and had been estranged from his own family for years after they had rejected him. We had bonded over our shared experience of familial disappointment, though we rarely discussed the details. Work provided a temporary distraction, but by the time I got home that evening, 3 more texts were waiting. One from Julia asking if I had decided about babysitting. One from Patrick saying the kids were really excited to spend time with Aunt Amy. One from my mother reminding me that family was the most important thing in life, and that she hoped I would do the right thing. The manipulation was transparent, but that did not make it any less effective. I felt the old guilt rising, the conditioned response to put everyone else's needs before my own. They were counting on me. The children would be disappointed. My mother would be hurt. But underneath the guilt was something else. A hard kernel of resentment that had been growing for years, fed by every slight and dismissal. I was tired. Tired of being the one who always accommodated, always understood, always sacrificed. Tired of being treated as less important while simultaneously being expected to be endlessly available. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at my kitchen table thinking, what would happen if I just said no? If I refused to babysit and let them deal with the consequences of their own poor planning and selfishness? The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. My phone buzzed again. This time it was an email notification. I opened it absently, expecting some work correspondence. Instead, I found a message from my mother's lawyer, Thomas Brennan. The subject line read, "Estate planning documents. Review required." I clicked the email open, my heart rate picking up. Why would my mother's lawyer be emailing me about estate planning? Was something wrong with her health that she had not told me about? The email was formal and brief. "Dear Amy, your mother has updated her will and asked that I send you a copy for your records. Please review the attached documents at your convenience. If you have any questions, feel free to contact my office." I downloaded the attachment with trembling fingers. It was a 16-page PDF, full of legal language that I had to read through twice to fully understand. When I finally processed what I was seeing, I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My mother had left everything to Patrick. The house in St. Paul that had been in our family for 30 years, paid off and worth at least $400,000. Her retirement accounts, substantial after decades of careful saving. Her life insurance policy. The antique furniture that had belonged to my grandmother. Every single asset she owned was designated for my younger brother. Julia was listed as the executor and received a small bequest of $20,000 for her trouble. I was mentioned once in a single line that read, "To my daughter Amy, I leave my collection of books and my gratitude for her understanding." Books. She was leaving me books, not even valuable first editions or rare volumes. Just her personal library of paperback novels and self-help titles. The gratitude line felt like mockery. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the document on my laptop screen, trying to process what I was seeing. This was not a standard estate plan where assets were divided among children. This was a deliberate choice to give everything to one child while leaving another with essentially nothing. I scrolled back through the email from the lawyer. It had been sent to all 3 siblings. Patrick and Julia had received this same document. They knew. They knew that Patrick was inheriting everything, and they had still uninvited me from Mom's birthday trip while expecting me to babysit their children. The cruelty of it was stunning. I thought about the timing. My mother was 65, hopefully with many years left, but she had clearly been thinking about her mortality. She had made these decisions and had them formalized by a lawyer. This was not a careless oversight. This was intentional. I needed to understand why. I called my mother, not caring that it was nearly 10 at night. She answered on the second ring. "Amy, is everything all right? I got an email from your lawyer about your will." Silence. Then, Oh, yes. I asked Thomas to send that out this week. Can you explain to me why Patrick is getting everything? Sweetheart, this is not really something to discuss over the phone. Then when would you like to discuss it? Before or after I spend my weekend babysitting 5 children while everyone celebrates your birthday without me? Her voice turned cold. I don't appreciate your tone. And I don't appreciate being written out of your will like I don't matter. I'm your daughter, Mom. Do I really mean so little to you? Patrick needs the support. He has a family to take care of. You have a good job and no dependents. You'll be fine on your own. There it was, the same justification that had governed every inequity my entire life. Patrick needed more, so Patrick got more. My independence and self-sufficiency were being used as weapons against me, as reasons why I deserved less. So because I've worked hard and made responsible choices, I get nothing? Because I don't have children, my relationship with you is worth a box of paperbacks? You're twisting this into something it's not. I'm trying to be practical. The house will give Patrick stability. The money will help him provide for his children. You don't need those things. It's not about need. It's about what this says. That you value him more than me. That my life matters less because it looks different from his. Amy, you're being dramatic. This is a financial decision, not an emotional one. But it was emotional. Every financial decision was emotional when it came to family, especially when those decisions were so lopsided. Money was just a stand-in for love, for worth, for mattering. And my mother had just told me, in legal terms, exactly how much I mattered to her. I'm not going to babysit, I said quietly. I'm not going to make your lives easier while you treat me like I'm disposable. If you refuse to help your family, that's your choice. But don't expect people to forget it. The way you've forgotten every time I've helped before. The way you've forgotten that I'm your child too. She hung up. I sat there with the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the silence. Around me, my apartment felt like a sanctuary suddenly. A space that was mine alone, unpolluted by the toxic dynamics that had shaped my entire childhood. I opened my laptop and looked at the will again, reading through it more carefully. The document had been executed 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. My mother had been planning this birthday trip, while already having legally declared that Patrick was the only child who truly mattered. Julia had known when she sent that text uninviting me. Patrick had known when he had Julia ask me to babysit his children. They had all known, and they had all participated in the charade of family, expecting me to play my role as the accommodating sister and daughter, while they quietly cut me out of any real stake in our family legacy. I thought about my grandmother, whose antique furniture was now designated for Patrick. She had taught me to bake when I was 7, spending hours in her kitchen showing me how to make bread and pies. She had been the one person in my family who had seemed to see me clearly, who had valued my quieter personality instead of viewing it as a defect. Her belongings should have been divided among all her grandchildren, not given wholesale to the golden boy. A new text arrived from Julia. Mom is really upset. What did you say to her? She's crying and saying you were cruel. Can you please just apologize and agree to help with the kids? This is getting out of hand. I blocked Julia's number. Then I blocked Patrick's. Then, after a moment's hesitation, I blocked my mother's as well. The silence that followed was profound. I made a decision. I was not going to argue, not going to try to make them understand or see my perspective. They never would. I was going to do something I should have done years ago. I was going to stop participating in a family dynamic that diminished me. I opened my laptop and booked a flight. If they wanted to celebrate without me, fine. But they were not going to use me as their backup plan. They were not going to have it both ways. I was going to take that weekend off I had already requested and use it for myself, on my own terms, in my own way. The destination did not matter much. I chose Denver because I had never been and flights were reasonable. I booked a hotel near the mountains, picturing myself hiking alone, eating in restaurants where no one knew me, existing in a space where I was not the disappointing daughter or the inconvenient sister. Then I drafted an email to all three of them. I kept it brief. I've received the estate planning documents and appreciate the clarity about where I stand in this family. I won't be available for babysitting this weekend or any other time in the foreseeable future. I need to focus on my own life and the people who actually value me. Don't contact me unless you're ready to have an honest conversation about how you've treated me. I'm turning off my phone and taking time for myself. Amy. I hit send before I could second guess myself. Then I powered down my phone completely and put it in my desk drawer. The week passed in a strange bubble of calm. At work, I was more focused than I had been in months. Without the constant background noise of family drama and guilt, my mind felt clearer. Brandon noticed the change. Whatever you did, keep doing it. You seem lighter. I set some boundaries, cut some people out of my life for a while. Family? Yeah. He nodded. Best thing I ever did. Hardest thing too, but best. The Friday morning I was scheduled to fly to Denver. I woke early and felt genuinely excited for the first time in weeks. My suitcase was packed with hiking clothes and novels I had been meaning to read. I had planned nothing specific beyond a general intention to explore, to be alone, to remember what it felt like to make choices based solely on what I wanted. At work on Thursday, my boss Helen had pulled me aside during lunch. She was a sharp woman in her 50s who had built the marketing firm from nothing and had little patience for nonsense. You seem different this week. Good different. What changed? I had considered how much to share, then decided honesty might be refreshing. I set some boundaries with my family, stopped letting them treat me like I only matter when they need something from me. Helen had smiled, a knowing expression crossing her face. I did the same thing with my sister about 10 years ago. Best decision I ever made. Family doesn't get a free pass to treat you poorly just because you share DNA. Remember that. Now, standing in my kitchen drinking coffee at 6 a.m, I thought about Helen's words. Family doesn't get a free pass. It seemed so obvious. Yet I had spent 29 years acting as if blood relations somehow excused cruelty and dismissal. My flight was at 1 p.m. I had the morning to finish last-minute preparations, water my plants, take out the trash. Normal domestic tasks that felt weighted with significance, because I was doing them on my own terms, for my own benefit. I had not turned my phone back on since sending that email. I did not know if anyone had responded, or if they had simply written me off as dramatic and moved on with their plans. Part of me was curious, but a larger part treasured the silence. No demands, no guilt trips, no passive-aggressive texts disguised as concern. I was about to step into the shower when my doorbell rang. I glanced at the clock. 7:15. Far too early for a package delivery, and I was not expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw Julia standing on my doorstep, her 3 children clustered around her. My stomach dropped. I had not given her my new address when I moved apartment 6 months ago. She must have gotten it from my mother. I considered not answering, but the doorbell rang again, and I could hear one of the kids whining about being cold. October in Minneapolis was not forgiving, and they were in light jackets. I opened the door but did not invite them in. "What are you doing here, Julia?" She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed and pulled back in a messy ponytail. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her usual put-together appearance was replaced by yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt. "We need to talk." "I don't think we do." I was pretty clear in my email. "Amy, please, can we come in? The kids are freezing." I looked at her children, who were not my responsibility but also were not to blame for their parents' behavior. I stepped aside and let them enter. The kids immediately spread out across my living room, the 2 older ones heading for the couch while the youngest, barely 3, clung to Julia's leg. "You have 5 minutes," I said. Julia sat on the edge of my armchair, looking uncomfortable in my space. She had only visited my apartment once before, shortly after I moved in, and had spent the entire visit making comments about how small it was compared to her house in the suburbs. You can't just disappear like this. Do you have any idea how much chaos you've caused? I haven't caused anything. I simply stopped making myself available to be used. That's not fair. We're family, are we? Because the way family is supposed to work, people treat each other with basic respect and consideration. They don't uninvite their sister from their mother's birthday and then demand she babysit. They don't leave one child everything in a will while giving another child books and gratitude. Julia's face flushed. You saw the will. Obviously, your mother's lawyer sent it to all of us, remember? Did you think I would just accept it quietly? Mom has her reasons. Patrick has been struggling. Patrick has been struggling his entire adult life because he's never had to do anything difficult. You and Mom have cushioned every fall, funded every failure, and now you're setting him up with an inheritance that will let him continue avoiding responsibility forever. One of Julia's kids turned on my television without asking, and I bit back a comment. They were children. This was not their fault. You don't understand. Patrick is depressed. He's been having a really hard time lately. And what about me? Did anyone ask if I was having a hard time? Did anyone consider that maybe being excluded and dismissed by my family might affect me? You're strong. You've always been strong. You don't need the same kind of support. There it was again. That twisted logic that punished competence and rewarded dysfunction. Being strong doesn't mean I don't have feelings, Julia. It doesn't mean I don't deserve to be treated with basic human decency by the people who are supposed to love me. She looked down at her hands. I know we haven't been fair to you. I do know that. But Mom is set in her ways, and Patrick really does need help. Then you and Mom can help him. That's your choice. But I'm done being the family ATM of emotional labor and practical support. I'm done being invisible until you need something. What are we supposed to do about this weekend? David and I were counting on you to watch the kids. The entitlement was breathtaking. Even now, after everything, she could not see past her own needs. You'll figure it out. Hire a babysitter. Cancel your plans. Ask Patrick to contribute since you're doing so much to make sure he inherits everything. I don't care what you do, but it won't involve me. Julia's youngest started crying, a high-pitched wail that made my head hurt. She picked him up and bounced him absently, her attention still fixed on me. If you don't help us this weekend, Mom is going to be so disappointed. She might cut you out completely. She already has. Or did you miss the part where she left me her old books? That's just money. She still loves you. Love is not just a word, Julia. It's actions. It's treating people like they matter. When has Mom's love for me ever looked like anything more than expecting me to be convenient? Julia stood, gathering her children with the efficiency of long practice. I think you're being selfish and short-sighted. Family is forever, Amy. Jobs and friends come and go, but family is what matters in the end. Then maybe you should all try acting like family instead of like people who keep me around for utility purposes. She herded her kids toward the door, her face tight with anger. When you're alone and miserable in 20 years, don't come crying to us. You made this choice. I did, and I'm good with it. After they left, I locked the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. The confrontation had been both awful and necessary. I had said things I had thought for years but never spoken aloud. The truth was out now, hanging in the air like smoke. I checked the time. 8:30. My flight was in less than 5 hours. I needed to finish getting ready, but first I needed to calm down. I made more coffee and sat on my couch where Julia's children had been moments before. The television was still on, playing some cartoon about talking animals. I turned it off and sat in the silence. My hands were shaking slightly. Confrontation had never been my strength. I preferred to avoid conflict, to smooth things over, to keep the peace. But peace at what cost? I had been keeping the peace my entire life, and all it had earned me was a lifetime of being overlooked. I was in the shower when my doorbell rang again. I almost ignored it, assuming Julia had come back for round 2. But curiosity won out. I wrapped myself in a robe and checked the peephole. Patrick stood there, looking annoyed. His wife Melissa was with him, holding their 2 kids. Unlike Julia, he did not bother ringing again. He pulled out his phone and started texting. Probably to me, not realizing my phone was still powered down in my desk drawer. I opened the door. "What do you want, Patrick?" He looked up, startled. "Jesus, Amy, you couldn't answer your phone like a normal person? My phone is off. I told you all not to contact me." "Yeah, well, we need to talk about this weekend. Julia said you refused to help." "That's correct." Melissa shifted the toddler on her hip. She was a striking woman with dark hair and sharp features, always immaculately dressed even when wrangling 2 small children. I had never understood what she saw in my brother beyond his boyish charm, which wore thin after about 5 minutes of conversation. "Amy, I know there's family drama happening, but the kids were really looking forward to spending time with you. Can't you put aside whatever issue you're having and just help us out this once?" "This once? Do you have any idea how many times I've babysat for you over the past 3 years? I've lost count. And I've never asked for anything in return, never complained, never been anything but available whenever you called. And we appreciate that," Patrick said, in the tone of someone who had never appreciated anything in his life. "Which is why we thought you'd be cool helping out one more time. I'm not cool with being uninvited from Mom's birthday and then expected to provide free childcare. I'm not cool with finding out you're inheriting everything while I get a pile of old paperbacks. I'm not cool with any of this, actually." Patrick's face darkened. "The will thing is not my fault. That's Mom's decision. And you're perfectly happy to benefit from it without questioning whether it's fair or right. Life isn't fair, Amy. You of all people should know that by now. Some people need more help than others. That's just how it is." I looked at Melissa, who had the grace to appear uncomfortable. She knew this was wrong. I could see it in the way she would not quite meet my eyes. But she would not speak up, would not risk her husband's inheritance by suggesting he share it. "Did Mom ever mention to either of you that she planned to leave everything to Patrick? Or did you just receive the documents from the lawyer like I did?" Melissa glanced at Patrick before answering. "She talked to us about it a few months ago. She wanted to make sure we were comfortable with the arrangement. A few months ago. This had been in the works for that long, and no one had thought to give me a heads up. They had all been complicit in keeping me in the dark, so everyone knew except me. Everyone got to weigh in except me. Do you understand how that feels?" Patrick shifted impatiently. "Look, we don't have time for this. We need to know if you're going to help this weekend or not. Just a yes or no, Amy. Don't make this complicated." "No. The answer is no. I have plans." "What plans? You live alone and work all the time. What could you possibly have planned that's more important than family?" The contempt in his voice was stunning, as if my life was so empty and meaningless that I should always be available to serve his needs. "I'm going to Denver. I have a flight in 4 hours." "Denver? For what?" "For myself. Because I want to. Because I can. I don't need a better reason than that." Melissa spoke up, her voice gentler than Patrick's, but no less manipulative. "Amy, I understand you're hurt, but taking off to another state in the middle of a family crisis isn't going to solve anything. Stay. Help us through this weekend, and then we can all sit down and talk about the will situation. I'm sure there's room for compromise." "There's no compromise. The will is legal and final. Mom made her choice, and I'm making mine." Patrick's phone rang. He answered it, walking a few steps away. I could hear my mother's voice on the other end, high-pitched and upset. He listened for a moment, then put her on speaker without asking my permission. "Amy, are you there? Patrick says you're refusing to help this weekend. Please, sweetheart, reconsider. I know you're upset about the will, but that's separate from this. Family is family. We help each other. I stared at the phone in Patrick's hand. No, Mom. I'm done helping people who don't value me. You made it very clear where I stand in this family. I'm accepting that and moving on. You're being childish. This is my birthday weekend, and you're ruining it with your dramatics. I'm not ruining anything. I was already excluded, remember? You're all going to have a wonderful time without me, just like you planned. I'm simply declining to make that easier for you by providing free labor. If you get on that plane, you're making a choice. Don't expect us to welcome you back with open arms when you decide you've made a mistake. The threat was clear. Submit or be cast out. It was the same ultimatum that had governed my relationship with my family for as long as I could remember. The difference was that this time, I was not afraid of the consequences. I'll take my chances. Have a great birthday, Mom. I hope it's everything you want it to be. I hung up on her. Patrick looked at his phone in disbelief, then at me. You just hung up on Mom. I did. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a flight to catch. You're really doing this? You're really going to choose some random vacation over your family? I'm choosing myself over people who have made it abundantly clear that I'm expendable. There's a difference. I closed the door on them and locked it. Through the wood, I could hear Patrick saying something to Melissa, his voice angry. Then footsteps retreating, car doors closing, an engine starting. I stood in my entryway, adrenaline coursing through my body. I had done it. I had actually stood up to them, refused their demands, prioritized my own needs. It felt terrifying and liberating in equal measure. But there was no time to process. I needed to finish packing, needed to get to the airport, needed to follow through on the decision I had made. Backing out now would undo everything, would prove that they could bully me back into compliance with enough pressure. I finished my shower quickly and dressed in comfortable travel clothes. My suitcase was already by the door. I did one final check of my apartment, made sure everything was secure, and called a rideshare to take me to the airport. The driver was a chatty middle-aged man who asked if I was traveling for business or pleasure. Pleasure, I said, and the word felt revolutionary. When was the last time I had done something purely for pleasure, with no other justification needed? At the airport, I checked in and made it through security with time to spare. I bought an overpriced sandwich and a magazine, then sat at the gate watching planes take off and land. Around me, other travelers moved with purpose, heading to destinations that mattered to them for reasons I would never know. Everyone was living their own story, making their own choices. My phone was still off, buried in my purse. I had no idea if they were still trying to reach me, still demanding that I cave and return to my designated role. I did not want to know. The silence was precious. Boarding was smooth. I had splurged on Economy Plus, giving myself a little extra legroom and a free drink. I settled into my window seat and watched Minneapolis disappear below me as we climbed into the October sky. The clouds were thick and gray, typical for this time of year, but above them the sun was brilliant. I spent the flight reading one of the novels I had brought, losing myself in someone else's story. It was a thriller about a woman who disappeared and started a new life, leaving behind everyone who had taken her for granted. The parallels were not lost on me. When we landed in Denver, the sky was clear and blue, the mountains visible in the distance. The air felt different here, drier and thinner. I collected my suitcase and took another rideshare to my hotel. I had chosen a place in Capitol Hill, an older neighborhood with Victorian houses and tree-lined streets. My hotel was a renovated historic building with high ceilings and original wood floors. My room overlooked a park where people were walking dogs and jogging despite the chill. I unpacked slowly, taking my time to hang up clothes and arrange my toiletries in the bathroom. Small domestic rituals that felt significant because I was doing them for myself, in a place I had chosen, with no one making demands on my time or energy. That evening, I walked through the neighborhood until I found a small Italian restaurant that looked promising. I ate alone at a table by the window, watching strangers pass by on the sidewalk. The pasta was excellent, rich and perfectly cooked. I ordered a glass of wine and took my time with the meal, savoring each bite. No one knew where I was. No one could reach me. The freedom was intoxicating. Back at the hotel, I finally turned on my phone. The screen lit up with notifications. 47 texts, 23 missed calls, 12 voicemails. I scrolled through them, not reading in detail, but getting the general gist. Julia, increasingly frantic messages about needing my help, about how I was being unreasonable, about how Mom was beside herself. Patrick, angry texts calling me selfish and telling me I was dead to him if I did not come back immediately. My mother, guilt-laden voicemails about family obligations and how disappointed she was in me. And then, buried in the avalanche of hostility, a single text from Melissa. I understand why you left. I'm sorry for my part in this. You deserve better. I stared at that message for a long time. It was the closest thing to an acknowledgement I had received from anyone. It did not fix anything, did not change the fundamental dynamics at play, but it was something. I did not respond to any of the messages. Instead, I turned the phone back off and put it away. Tomorrow I would hike in the mountains. The day after, I might visit some museums or explore downtown Denver. I had 3 days to myself. 3 days where the only person I needed to please was me. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Saturday morning, I woke early and drove to Red Rocks Park. The rock formations were stunning, ancient red stone sculpted by wind and time into dramatic shapes. I hiked for hours, pushing my body up steep trails, breathing hard in the thin air. At the summit, I looked out over the landscape and felt something shift inside me. I had spent my entire life trying to earn love from people who were determined not to give it freely. I had contorted myself into smaller and smaller shapes, hoping that if I just asked for less, needed less, took up less space, they would finally see me and value me. But it did not work that way. Some people were takers by nature, and no amount of giving would ever be enough. I thought about the will, about my mother's choice to give everything to Patrick. In a way, it was a gift. Not the estate itself, but the clarity. She had shown me exactly where I stood, had removed all ambiguity. There was freedom in that, painful as it was. I hiked back down as the afternoon light turned golden, my legs tired and my mind clear. I stopped at a coffee shop on the way back to the hotel and sat outside despite the cold, drinking something with too much foam and watching Denver residents go about their Saturday. A woman about my age sat down at the next table with a book and a latte. She caught my eye and smiled. Good hiking weather today. It really was. I went to Red Rocks. First time in Denver? Yeah, just here for the weekend, taking some time for myself. Good for you. Sometimes you need to get away from everything and just breathe. We chatted for a few minutes. The easy conversation of strangers who will never see each other again. She told me about a good brunch place nearby, recommended a bookstore in the neighborhood. Then she returned to her book, and I to my thoughts. But the brief connection felt significant. A reminder that kindness did not have to be complicated or conditional. Some people were just naturally generous with their warmth. That evening, I decided to turn my phone on again, just to check if there was anything urgent that required my attention. The messages had continued throughout the day, though they had slowed somewhat. Most were variations on the same themes: anger, guilt-tripping, demands. But there was one new email, this one from my mother's lawyer again. The subject line read, "Additional estate documentation. Clarification required." I opened it with a sense of dread. What now? The email was longer this time, and more personal in tone than the previous one. Dear Amy, I hope this message finds you well. I am writing to address some concerns that have come to my attention regarding the estate planning documents I sent last week. Upon review of your mother's file, I have discovered a discrepancy that I feel obligated to bring to your attention. Your mother executed a new will 3 weeks ago, but there is an earlier will on file from 18 months ago that includes significantly different provisions. The earlier will divided assets equally among all 3 children. Your mother never formally revoked this earlier will, which could potentially create legal complications. Additionally, I have documentation suggesting that your mother was under significant pressure from certain family members when she executed the most recent will. I am bound by attorney-client privilege, but I felt it was important for you to be aware of this situation. If you wish to discuss this matter further, please contact my office at your earliest convenience. The estate planning as currently documented may not reflect your mother's true wishes. Thomas Brennan, estate attorney. I read the email 3 times, my heart pounding. Pressure from family members. That could only mean Patrick and Julia. They had pushed my mother to change her will, to exclude me. And there was an earlier version that divided everything equally, a version my mother had never properly revoked. The implications were staggering. The lawyer was essentially telling me that I had grounds to contest the current will, that the distribution I had been so upset about might not be legal after all. I sat with this information, trying to decide what it meant, what I wanted to do with it. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let them have their inheritance and their drama and walk away clean. But another part of me, the part that had been silenced and dismissed for 29 years, wanted justice, wanted them to face consequences for their cruelty. I drafted a response to the lawyer. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I would like to schedule a consultation to discuss my options. I will be back in Minneapolis on Monday evening. Please let me know your availability this coming week. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I turned off my phone again and went to bed. Sunday in Denver was perfect. I woke without an alarm, had a leisurely breakfast at the brunch place the woman from yesterday had recommended, and spent the afternoon browsing the bookstore she had mentioned. I bought 3 novels and a collection of essays about solitude. The clerk, a young man with blue hair and kind eyes, asked if I was visiting. Just for the weekend, taking some time for myself. Best thing you can do sometimes. Hope you're enjoying the city. I really am. It was true. Denver had been exactly what I needed. A place where no one knew me, where I could exist without the weight of family expectations. I had hiked and eaten and read and thought, and in the process had remembered who I was, outside the context of being the overlooked daughter and dismissed sister. Monday morning, I flew back to Minneapolis with a sense of purpose I had not felt before. The plane ride was smooth, and I spent it making notes on my phone about what I wanted to discuss with the lawyer. If Patrick and Julia had manipulated my mother into changing her will, that was elder abuse. If the new will was legally questionable due to the existence of an unrevoked earlier version, that was fraud. Either way, they did not get to win through deception and pressure. I had Tuesday scheduled as a work-from-home day, which was perfect. As soon as I got back to my apartment Monday evening, I emailed Thomas again to confirm our meeting time. He responded within minutes. Can you come to my office tomorrow at 10 a.m.? I have some additional information that I think you'll find relevant. I agreed, and spent the rest of the evening unpacking and preparing for the meeting. I also drafted a detailed timeline of every instance I could remember of my family dismissing or excluding me, every time Patrick had been given preferential treatment, every sacrifice I had made that had been taken for granted. If this was going to turn into a legal situation, documentation would matter. That night, I finally listened to the voicemails my family had left over the weekend. They ranged from angry to manipulative to genuinely wounded. My mother's voice in the last one, left Sunday evening, was small and sad. Amy, please call me. I don't understand why you're doing this. We can work this out if you'll just talk to me. Please come home. But I was home, in my apartment, in my life, in the space I had built for myself. They wanted me to come back to them, to return to being the person who made their lives easier. That was never going to happen again. Tuesday morning, I dressed carefully in professional clothes, black slacks, a cream blouse, my good blazer. I wanted to look composed and competent, like someone who would not be easily dismissed. The law office was downtown, in an older building with marble floors and dark wood paneling. Thomas met me in the lobby and guided me back to his private office. He was older than I expected, probably in his late 60s, with silver hair and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. His office was filled with law books and framed degrees. He gestured for me to sit in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. "Thank you for coming in, Amy. I know this situation is complicated and painful. I want you to know that I take my responsibilities as an estate attorney very seriously, and I have some concerns about the recent changes to your mother's will." "What kind of concerns?" He pulled out a thick file and opened it. "Your mother first came to me 18 months ago to update her estate plan. At that time, she was very clear about wanting to divide her assets equally among her 3 children. She expressed concern that Patrick might struggle financially, but she wanted all of you to benefit from her estate. We executed a will that reflected those wishes." He slid a document across the desk. I recognized my mother's signature at the bottom. The distribution section clearly stated that assets would be divided equally, 1/3 to Julia, 1/3 to Patrick, 1/3 to me. 3 weeks ago, your mother called and said she needed to make changes. When she came in, she was not alone. Your brother Patrick accompanied her. He did most of the talking during that appointment, explaining why he needed more support, why you and Julia were financially stable and didn't require an inheritance. Your mother sat quietly and agreed with everything he said. So Patrick pressured her into changing the will. I cannot prove that legally, but it certainly raised red flags for me. I asked to speak with your mother privately, but Patrick refused to leave the room. He said she needed his support because discussing financial matters made her anxious. I should have insisted, but I allowed it to proceed. Thomas looked genuinely troubled. After they left, I made notes about my concerns. Then last week, when I sent the updated will to you and your siblings as your mother requested, I reviewed the file more carefully. I realized that your mother never formally revoked the earlier will. In Minnesota, if there are 2 conflicting wills, and the later one does not explicitly revoke the earlier one, there can be grounds to challenge the later version, especially if there's evidence of undue influence. What would challenging it involve? You would need to file a petition with probate court, arguing that the second will was the result of undue influence, and that the first will better reflects your mother's true intentions. Given that your mother is still living, this is unusual, but not unprecedented. More commonly, this kind of challenge happens after death. However, the existence of these competing documents creates a legal gray area that could be addressed now to prevent future litigation. I thought about this carefully. If I challenge the will, what happens? It becomes a matter of public record. Your family would know you're contesting it. There would be depositions, possibly testimony. It could get ugly. But if you can demonstrate that Patrick exerted undue influence, which my notes and observations would support, there's a good chance a judge would rule in favor of the earlier will. I left Thomas's office with copies of both wills and a retainer agreement. The choice felt enormous, but I knew what I had to do. I called him that afternoon. I want to challenge the will. What do I need to do? The legal process moved quickly. Thomas filed the petition within a week. My mother, Patrick, and Julia were all served with notice that I was challenging the will on grounds of undue influence. The explosion of rage that followed was predictable, but still stunning in its intensity. Patrick called me 17 times in one day, leaving voicemails calling me every name he could think of. Julia sent a long email about how I was destroying the family. My mother called once, her voice cold, telling me I was breaking her heart. I saved all the messages as evidence of their reaction to being held accountable. The depositions were scheduled for January. Melissa contacted me privately and offered to testify. I'm filing for divorce, she told me over coffee. And I want you to know that Patrick manipulated your mother. I heard him practicing what he was going to say to the lawyer. He planned the whole thing. Her testimony would be crucial. She described in detail how Patrick had rehearsed his speech, how he had specifically targeted the will change as a way to secure his financial future without having to work for it. The judge's ruling came in March. She found that the second will had been executed under undue influence, and that the first will would stand as the valid expression of my mother's estate plan. Assets would be divided equally among all 3 children. The ruling also included a stern rebuke of Patrick's behavior, and a note that any future attempts to change the will would be subject to careful scrutiny for signs of elder abuse. Thomas called to tell me personally, "You won, Amy. The first will stands." The immediate aftermath was predictable. Patrick sent a furious text calling me vindictive. Julia sent nothing. My mother called once, crying, asking how I could have done this to her. I did not respond to any of them. Instead, I focused on moving forward. I had learned something important through this whole ordeal. Family was supposed to be a source of support and love, not a burden to be endured. When it became the latter, you had the right to walk away, to protect yourself, to demand better. Spring came to Minneapolis. I got a promotion at work, taking on a senior project manager role with more responsibility and significantly better pay. Brandon and I became closer friends. I started dating someone I met through a friend, a kind man named Trevor, who worked as a physical therapist and had his own history of family estrangement. In May, I received a letter from my mother. It was handwritten and brief. "Amy, I've had a lot of time to think about what happened. Your brother and sister are angry with me for saying this, but I need you to know that you were right. Patrick did pressure me. I let him because it was easier than standing up to him. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I see it now. You deserved better from me. Mom." I read the letter several times. It did not fix anything, but it was an acknowledgement. I put it in a drawer and let myself sit with it. Eventually, I might reach out, might try to rebuild some kind of relationship with my mother, or I might not. The choice was mine now. Patrick never recovered from the will dispute. The court case had exposed his pattern of financial manipulation, and Melissa's divorce proceeded swiftly. Without his wife's income, he was forced to find steady employment. He ended up taking a management position at a retail store, bitter and blaming everyone but himself. Julia maintained minimal contact with him, finally seeing his true nature. He spent the following years cycling through jobs and relationships, always the victim in his own narrative, never accepting responsibility. I built a life I was proud of, surrounded by people who valued me. The scars from my family remained, but they no longer defined me. I had learned to set boundaries, to demand respect, to walk away from people who refused to treat me with basic decency. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to participate in your own diminishment. I had gotten on that plane to Denver running from pain, but I had landed somewhere better. A place where I finally understood my worth was not determined by people who chose not to see it. Looking back on the revenge journey, I realized it was never about the money. It was about finally demanding to be seen, valued, and treated as someone who mattered.